Hey everybody, my name is Antoni. I'm here at My Garden Nursery, and this is Ask the Expert. So here at My Garden, we're at 929 East Bakerview Highway. We are a full-service nursery. Here you're going to not just find some of the most remarkable plants being kept to the highest standards, but you're also going to get some great advice on how to use them and the proper ways to plant plants. That way we can set you up to succeed. I want to kind of share with you a few tips that I think every homeowner could possibly take and use in their own gardens. My very first tip that I use to qualify my customers is finding out what kind of sun do they have. You would be surprised how many people have just not paid attention to that. When you're at My Garden Nursery, we have our nursery set up a little bit differently. If you ever wonder what any of this material takes, in addition to having botanical signs that will give you a hint, also look up. We try to put everything exactly where you need to put it in your garden. Full sun right now is probably one of the most exciting aspects because we have a large contingency of plants. Not the least of which, Lygostromia indica. You're going to know this as crepe myrtle, and anybody from the south, we all know these plants. But the truly exciting part is we have a whole section of them now bred specifically for the Pacific Northwest. These are guaranteed to bloom much earlier than their counterparts that you and I know from the south. We also have things like here, barberries. Barberries are an amazing plant, rich with color. They're just beaming. These guys here not only need full sun, but remember, they need good drainage. They do not want their feet to be kept wet. Another great tip is the right plant for the right place. If we have an area, for instance, that we need something about 5 feet tall, there's no use in buying anything that's going to be 20 feet tall because that's going to condemn you to being taking care of these plants and keeping them cut down when the plant really wants to be a much larger plant. So the next tip I want to give you is something that for whatever reason people are a little reluctant to share with you, but I'm going to share it with you now, and this is going to up your success level exponentially. This is on planting. Planting obviously is going to be one of the biggest things you're going to do. Here's what I want to share with you. When we buy any tree or shrub, or even perennial for that matter, what we're going to want to do is we're going to take this root ball and we're going to bust it up 3 ways to Sunday. But here's the caveat. I'm going to plant it about 1/2 inch above soil grade. Why would I do that, you might be asking yourself. Over the next year, this plant is going to settle right to ground level. If we were to plant this right flush right now, then as this settles, it's going to settle about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. Here's what happens. Right here is the crown of the plant. The crown of this plant is where this plant breathes. When it erodes and soil comes up around it, we end up cutting off its air circulation or its breathability. So what we want to do is we want to plant it to about here, go ahead and let it settle. But remember, the top of the soil that you see in the pot, you should always be able to see that no matter what. Remember, on top of this, no mulch, no compost, and no bark. That is going to increase your success rate by about 80%. All right, for all of you backyard orchards out there, fruit trees have become hugely successful in this neck of the woods. Fruit trees are kind of fun, but now be pre-warned. They're a little bit of work, but if you're willing to put that little bit of work into it, you're going to be richly paid off. Keep in mind that for the first few years that you buy your fruit tree, you're going to definitely want to keep it pruned back every February. We're going to also want to do some dormant oil. And then after it's done flowering, we're going to want to spray pretty regularly with some kind of an organic spray. I'm going to recommend a product called Orchard Spray. It's a pyrethrum and sulfur mix, completely natural. Use it right up to the day of harvest. But that one product definitely eliminates most of your common insects, diseases, and funguses. If you are able to devote the time needed to this, these are going to reward you. So I have a number of customers who have either just moved here or just bought a house. It's always interesting to see when people buy a house that's already been landscaped. When I roll up to their home, I look around and the landscape looks nothing like them, which is of course why I'm there to begin with. So a couple of things I want to share with you on how to create the best landscape for you. The first place that I always start is I always start around the house for foundation planting. I've always told my customers that foundation planting is going to be the least exciting, most expensive, but the most necessary and most important part of your entire landscape. Why, you may ask? Because a good foundation planting can actually up the value of your home. Once we get some great shrubs, evergreen shrubs around our yard, how do we begin actually putting together our garden? Let me put it to you this way. I equate it to a human body. We have bones, tissue, and muscle. When I talk to people about putting together a garden, we're going to first set on one area of the garden. Do not look at your entire garden because you'll become overwhelmed. But what we really want to do is look at one area, and we want to start with bones. Keep in mind that everything is going to hang off of those bones. What am I talking about? Trees. We want trees to begin delineating the area, and that is actually going to begin making points of reference for us. Once we have our trees in, then let's look at muscle. Muscle is what I oftentimes refer to as just pure shrubbery. That's when we get to bring in some color with beautiful flowering shrubs, or even some great textures that we can mix together. When I talk about tissue or skin, if you will, that's when we're talking about absolute perennials and that riot of color. It's important that when we really work with those type of elements, that we understand when they bloom. I maintain that flower gardens, there should be a rise and a decline to every flower, much like there is in a symphony. So keep in mind that if I've got something blooming in April, I definitely need something coming up for May, and then all the way through. If we plan this correctly, you and I can end up creating the most beautiful garden for yourselves, that there'll be something blooming year-round. So if you can remember all of these, you're going to be all the richer. If you can't remember these, my name is Antoni, and I'm with My Garden Nursery, and I would love to see you at some point.